Okay, shell is on. Shell is all nicely hardened dried. And the reason I like doing it this way is, again, just so when I put down my clay on top of this, the shell is going to make sure the surface isn't going to go anywhere. And if I want to, I can pull that beach ball out and I'll get moisture seeping into the shell, which will seep into the paper, and I can get drying from both sides. And I won't have to worry about my pumpkin collapsing due to that. So I am going to exercise that option right now just to demonstrate it. And I'm going to pull out my beach ball. And one of the things I really like doing with these is finding some sort of thing to hold the vent open, either a little bamboo skewer, tip of a little modeling tool if you've got it, but these things are everywhere. Even a little sliver of wood. You can just kind of pinch that, slide this thing in, pointy end or not, and that'll keep the air aperture or the aperture open. And I'm just going to rip up some of this bottom stuff here and put some pressure on the ball. We're all set. Your beach ball comes right out. Can be reused many times, no problem. And now I've got a spot where, as I'm drawing, I can have my ridges on one side. I can kind of aim this, have a fan blasting right towards the center or a little bit off to the side, so it's catching it like a flute or a wind instrument, blowing the air in and out, and I get kind of two-sided drawing. So, I'm doing this project. We're going to do the ridges as follows. I'm going to put in a nice big thick layer of clay all along the back. And having the shell here, I can go about a ½ inch deep on my coating. So I can get nice deep pumpkin grooves without really having to worry about them taking too long to dry. In terms of how far I go around, I'm just kind of looking at here's where the face is, and I kind of want to be more or less 180 degrees around the face. I'm a little less than 180 degrees all the way around, but I'm just about around the whole back of the face here. And so next thing I'm going to do is carefully make sure that this is ready to do the front side. And you can do this with fingers or tool if you feel like it. But this is just to make sure that when we move around to the face, we're going to have a nice, flat, smooth transition in there. That'll make it easy to go from finished section to unfinished section and have a nice blend. So I've just blended this down onto the surface that I'm going to get to next time after everything's dry. I'm going to do this on both sides as well as the top of the pumpkin. Again, with a tool or with fingers makes no difference. We're going to smooth the edge in. I do want to make sure that I don't go over anything. Like right here, I took a little bit of clay into this eye zone. That just means I've got too much. And I'll just pull that out of the section. So I don't really want to have any overlap with the spot that I have got facial carving. As with most of the ridges, you can use a piece of yarn, you can use a piece of cord, you can use a piece of anything you like, thread, string, doesn't matter. I just have some fishing line right here. Now what I'm going to be doing is kind of keep it kind of in the middle of the hole here where the beach ball, or yes, the beach ball used to be. And I'm going to try to take it around to the top of the pumpkin. Just going to put a little marker there for myself to make sure I know that is mostly his top. And all I'm going to do is set my wire in, or string or yarn or whatever, and I'm going to give a little push down, and this is going to leave, yep, a little shock fluff there, a nice polar impression top to bottom. And I don't have to worry about trying to draw lines, because if you draw lines, I have found in the past, invariably, they have started going diagonal and gotten a little off shape. But if I use a string to put the line in, like right there, I knew I wasn't going to the center, then I'd be fine. From the top to the bottom. You can put in as many of these lines as you like, because once you've got a few of them, you can use them as guides for any others that actually aren't impressed into the pumpkin. So here are all my guidelines for the surfaces and the major grooves. Next thing I'm going to do is take my tool here that's just the equivalent of a sharpened pencil. And you can use a sharpened pencil, pen, or whatever the heck you want. Does not have to be a special tool. In fact, here, I'll use the bottom of a paintbrush. And all I'm going to do is follow these lines and just push them a little wider. Because these are going to be the big grooves in the pumpkin. And as I said before, if you've got a spot where you didn't use the line, but I've got a guide here and I've got a guide up here, so I can, with relative confidence, make a line here using those other lines as guides. I don't have to have them. I just need them to more or less point the way. I'm going to take these lines up to the top. The top itself will be covered by the stem, which it looks like I'm a little off of, but that will be a-okay. So the top will be covered by the stem, so I don't really have to worry about things being too disgustingly perfect up here. So here are all my major groove lines. But the whole thing's a little bit ugly right now, so we're going to neaten it up. I've got here a little bit of smoothing paste, a brush, and what we're going to do is, number one, not ram the smoothing paste into the pumpkin, which I almost did there. I'm going to put the paste on the brush, get the craft shop goop out of there. I'm going to use the long edge of the brush here to go into one of these creases and just make sure the bottom of it is relatively smoothed out. Then I'll re-moisten my brush, and then I'll use it like regular style painting. And I'm going to paint along this edge, which should smooth out the clay. And round that crease. If I think it's getting a little closed up again, I just run the brush through it one more time. Then all the spots along here that are kind of rough and ick looking, I'm just going to moisten up my brush with some smoothing paste. run it along and smooth this thing out. So the surface looks pretty uniform. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the next groove. Moisten my brush, run the sharper, narrower edge through, spread the clay a little bit. It'll smooth the bottom of the rut. Once I've done that, I'll go back, paint the rims. They'll get rounded down. I'll just paint the middle on my way to the next rut. And even areas that are somewhat nasty looking will get pretty well smoothed in this method. So here's what it's giving me. And I'm just going to continue to do the whole back this same way. There's all my major grooves all set and done. The only other thing I want to make sure I do is make sure that any areas where I'm moving into my unfinished sections, just get a little paint down so that they're ready to pick up the slack for next time. And of course, this isn't all the detail that I like to do. I've got my major grooves. I could stop here, but let's face it, pumpkins usually have lots of tiny little minor grooves as well. There's a number of options you can have for those. You can take your brush and just kind of push more heavily into the mid spot here. Keeping it a little bit moist with your smoothing paste. And then when you like the crease that you've got, just flip your brush and paint it down. If it opened anything up that you don't like, you can just put it right back by running your brush through again. So that's just a depression in the pumpkin, which can give the pumpkin a really nice gourd-like appearance. Just gonna make sure I've got the same kind of mark all the way through. I can even remove some clay in that process, like some got on my brush there. And so some comes out, whoopity-doo. So that's a way to just have intermittent interfolds in between the major creases. Another thing you can do is take your pen and pencil, /or pencil, and put an extra crease in there. Rather than going with the whole long edge press down on these minor grooves, I like to just simply paint them down. No extra effort at splitting them. And they give a little bit of that same sort of effect where there's a tiny little minor groove in there. And I'll make my minor grooves a little bit sporadic. Like right here, I'll do the top, leave some space, then do the bottom. This one here, I'll do a little bit halfway, and then I'll do another one the other halfway. And you can have lots of fun just playing with these and giving your pumpkin some character. And once all your minor grooves are in, grab your brush and give them a little paint down. Major grooves and minor grooves, a very pumpkin-y looking surface. And because the shell is underneath it, it'll dry half off to the top atmosphere. Some of the water will seep into the shell and out into the paper underneath, and I'll just put a fan down there so it's getting two-sided drying. I'm going to take a quick look around, survey, and make sure I like all of the grooves I've got here. I'm happy with that. I'm going to stick this in a drying spot, pull the battery on the clock, and I'll meet you for the face.